This is 105.5 FM, 1320 AM, cable TV channel 25, and worldwide at country.am. It is 11:05 and time for Sheriff Derek Palmer from the Cherokee County Sheriff's Office to join us here on the radio. And as Jennifer said, there is that possibility of some accumulating snowfall Sunday morning.
I don't know whether to bring my T-shirts out or my long sleeves. I keep going back and forth.
It is confusing. I was I'm still wearing short sleeves today, but I'm sure this won't be very effective for the weekend.
It looks like probably about Sunday we'll be wearing some long sleeves on Sunday.
Yeah, and it's hard to imagine, and I was talking to a lot of people about this yesterday, us being in the 70-degree area yesterday, people running around with shorts, flip-flops, and short sleeves, and then even the mention of, 2 days we're going to have snow.
I was out working a little bit yesterday evening and last night, and I was riding around with my car windows down, and I thought that was so strange.
So I'm guessing with the fluctuating weather, it's kind of amazing that people can still stay healthy, not knowing. I know that affects just the change in seasons affects a lot of people.
Well, speaking of being healthy, I apologize to the viewer or the listeners out there today because I've got a nagging cough, and I may have to cough several times throughout the broadcast today, but I'll try to keep it to a minimum. I've got 4 bottles
of water over there, so he's in good condition.
We have to leave and go to the bathroom, though.
Yeah, all right. So, well, we hope you're feeling better and get to feeling better. A lot of people have had this cough.
Yeah, I don't feel bad at all. It's just a tickle in my throat and drainage, and I'm sure it has to do with sinuses and allergies and all those kind of things. But I don't feel bad at all. It's just I got that nagging cough I can't get rid of.
I know the drugstores have sold quite a bit of cough syrup and those things here lately, but there's been a lot of illness going around, and hopefully folks are getting beyond that and to a healthier.
I think if we can get to a stable environment out there, I think it might help, where it's not cold one day and hot the next day.
Yeah, it's just a confusing weather. And if there are some snowflakes and if it accumulates, and it's hard for me to imagine, too, as warm as the ground is, that we're going to get very much. So possibly a dusting here, especially the grassy areas.
From what I understand, the last weather report I got from Robin Caldwell and was looking at it, I think there's Saturday night, Sunday morning, it's supposed to be in the low 30s. And I think that what's going to happen, though, there's going to be some rain or cold rain come through first, and that'll drop the ground temperature pretty quick.
Right.
And then if the snow comes in on top of that, then we may get an accumulation. But it's so funny, and I laugh every time a snow forecast comes out, because depending on what you look at, it's got anywhere from a dusting to 5 inches.
Right. Yeah.
So we don't know what we're going to get.
And the latest map I saw was showing that rain-snow line where the rain and snow separates.
Right.
And it was running right through Cherokee County. So things to the north was snow, to the south was rain. So we may see a mixture. We may see nothing at all. So who knows until it actually happens. But it's supposed to be happening about the same time we're supposed to spring forward an hour on our clock. So remember this weekend to spring forward 1 hour as daylight saving time. I used to say savings time.
Well, if we're going to get snowed in and not go anywhere or do anything, Sunday morning would be the good time to do that, since we're springing forward that morning. That will let us catch up on our sleep and not have to lose an hour.
That is absolutely true. So this means springing forward, that means it's going to be lighter in the evening hours, correct?
Correct.
I always try to do that calculation in my head, and I get twisted up somehow. But
I love the early summer times when it's about 9 o'clock, 9:30, close to 10 o'clock before it gets dark outside. You can just get a lot of things done around the house and in the yard and gardens and all kind of different things that you normally can't get done in the wintertime and fall and spring. So summer, I love the summertime hours.
And a lot of people ask why we even have daylight saving time. And I did a lot of research, and a lot of it has
I hope you can explain it to me.
A lot of it has to go back to the consumption of fuel when they had like the street lights that were lit with, I guess, the oil. And it was just, and a lot of to do with the farmers and crops and things like that, just to adjust their schedule so they get the maximum amount of sunlight.
Oh, okay.
But I had never, until our research, thought about the just the savings in energy based on people's schedules.
Right.
I would have thought it would be easier just to adjust your schedule.
People at work and office lights on and computers these days and all those kind of things,
For me, if we just split it 30 minutes and just kept the same time all year, I wouldn't be upset at all.
Right. And that's what I of course I know there's reasons for everything, but I was always with the philosophy of when you wake up, it's a new day.
Yeah, it's a new day. That's right. And especially with daylight savings time, and now with technology, a lot of people don't even have to think about springing forward. Their cell phones automatically go forward. They have the clocks that are synced with the what is it, WWV, that reset their clocks. Until you get into your car and then you realize, you look at the dash and say, I'm late, or I'm early.
Well, I don't know if most people out there is probably like we are, but we can, in our house, the wall clocks and the clock on the stove and the clock on the microwave and the clock in the bedroom, and you look at all the clocks you have in your house, none of them are the same. There's usually 5 to 10 minutes difference between all of them.
That's true. I think I have everything except for one clock somewhere that sets itself. But I remember having to go all around the radio station, having to just reset all these clocks. And we had lamps that were on timers at one point. I have to crawl under desk to reset that, just so the lights would come on at the right time. But yeah, just for folks, remember to spring forward 1 hour before you go to bed tomorrow night. That way you'll be on time for church and all of your Sunday activities, unless you're snowed in.
And if it does snow on Sunday morning, I want to be sure and caution people, not to be out unless you have to, and those things. I know a lot of churches will still continue and still have service, and that's fine if you want to get out and do those things. But I know that a lot of people, including myself, and I'm putting myself in there with everybody else, when it snows, likes to get out and play and drive in the snow and do all those things. But when you do that, make sure that you do have four-wheel drive vehicles, and you be careful while you're out and those type of things, because it only takes just a second to lose control and to get into an accident and go through all that headache of property damage, and hopefully no one got hurt and those type of things. So just if it does snow this weekend and the roads are snowed over, just be sure and be careful when you're out driving around and playing it.
I think you said last week that the highest call volume normally happens on these snow days or questionable snow days.
It does.
When the roads are questionable.
Right.
And that's when your dispatch center really lights up.
Yeah,
I know from the latest maps that I've seen, those points to the north of us are probably going to see some accumulation, like Monroe County, Swain County, Graham County, especially the northern sections. And if it does snow this week, I can almost guarantee that Highway 441 between Cherokee and Gatlinburg will be closed.
It will be closed, I promise. If it snows, it will be closed.
Planning on going to Gatlinburg or Pigeon Forge, you might as well go ahead and start looking for alternate routes, or just stay home.
Well, we know, talking about the weather and the different things, we have 70 degrees and sunny, come a thunderstorm last night, snow tomorrow. So that's just the area that we live in.
It is the area that we live in.
Right.
All right. Yeah. Have you had a pretty busy? I looked at the detention center the last 5 days of inmates. It looks like you've had a very busy week.
We've had a busy week, and we're actually housing some inmates for Macon County and housing some, I think, for Graham County came over yesterday. And we do that quite often when there are different things going on with different detention centers. If they're getting full, sometimes they'll transfer to different places. Graham County, they have a situation over there where we do a lot of their prisoner housing for them, their females, and their males a lot of times we'll ship to Cherokee County and we'll house them just due to their circumstances and conditions over there with an old jail. So we house quite a bit of inmates for other people. Plus, we've been busy too. It's been a very hectic week.
All right. Yeah. How many detention centers are there in North Carolina? Is pretty much one per every county?
Pretty much one per county. There's some out on the eastern end of the state that has multi-county detention centers. It's not really feasible here for us, as far as having a multi-county dispatch and a multi-county detention center. But basically, there's one for every county. So there's approximately 100 across the state.
All right, that's quite a few detention centers, and this is a pretty large state if you think about how many counties. Exactly 100.
Yeah,
I'm not sure how many Georgia has. I know it's quite a few as well.
It's a little more. I think it's 120, 130, something like that.
That's a long state to drive through.
It is.
Yeah, if anybody who's driven to Florida knows.
Right.
You get past Atlanta, you think,
the thing about North Carolina, though, we have pretty, for the most part, we have some smaller counties, especially out east, but for the most part, North Carolina has pretty good-sized counties, pretty big counties. The Georgia counties are more smaller counties, where we have like almost 500 square miles in our county. A lot of the Georgia counties may only be 200 square miles, and so they have more counties, and so it kind of just seems like there's more area, more land, but I think it has a lot to do with just the size of the counties.
And the size of Cherokee County itself is huge in land area.
It's crazy big how big Cherokee County is. A lot of people don't realize that. We've talked about that before. When you think about even response times for patrol officers, most of the time you think about Cherokee County, you think about starting at Wolf Creek and coming through Ranger and Hiwassee Dam, and then you think about Murphy, Martins Creek, Peachtree, Marble, Andrews, and that's what most people think about. And they forget that on the northern end of the county with Hanging Dog and Grape Creek, Unaka and Violet and all those areas down in that end. And
Joe Brown Highway.
Joe Brown Highway that goes down through there. I was sharing with a person this week that, I timed it a while back and on a call that we had down in Unaka. And if I leave Murphy and drive as fast as I can drive, as with blue lights and siren and moving cars out of my way, it takes approximately 20 minutes to get from the Cherokee County Sheriff's Office to Unaka Community Center. And that's, like I say, that's driving as fast as you can drive.
That is fast.
And if you're driving normal speed and vehicles in the way and nobody moving over and that kind of thing, you're looking at approximately about 30 minutes, to 30 to 35 minutes to drive to Unaka Community Center from Murphy. And so a lot of people don't realize how big that area is and how far out it is. And, even with the response times, patrol officers, I think, a lot of times people complain because we have a 5 or 10 minute arrival.
Right.
But the way that we're working and spreading officers out around the county, if you get a 10 to 15 minute arrival in those areas from Hiwassee Dam back around the backside to Unaka and Beaver Dam and Hanging Dog and Grape Creek and those areas, you're pretty good if you get a 10 or 15 minute response time down in those areas. And so we try to do the best we can. We try to keep our officers spread out, work different zones, and be accessible in these areas to where when things do happen, we can get there fairly quickly.
How long does it take to get from the Tennessee line, just going the four lane, the way to top the county line there, just past
about
Upton?
The same, about 20 to 30 minutes. It's
that's good roads.
That's good straight good roads. But it's 54 miles.
54 miles
from the Tennessee line to Topton to the county line is 54 miles. And
I did not realize it was that wide.
And it's a long county. And that's the thing about it too, with even from going to one end of the county to the other, it takes a little bit of time to get across the county. And a lot of people don't realize, with 4 officers at a time out working, and of a daytime it's a little better because you have investigators, administrative staff, those type of people out of a daytime. But if it's in the middle of the night and you've only got four officers out working, it's hard to get all over this county and to get to different places. And we get complaints, not necessarily called in complaints, but just people concerned. I don't use the word complain, but just concerned about the fact of the drug dealings and the breaking and enterings and the different things that happens around the county, and trying to be proactive with those things. But literally, we would have to have about 10 people at a time working to get in all areas of the county and be really proactive to be out there to try to stop some of these things that's happening in these more inaccessible parts of the county. We try to be centrally located. We try to be spread out. We generally try to keep a car in the Marble Andrews area, try to keep one in the Murphy Peachtree area, try to keep one in the Ranger Hiwassee Dam area. And if we have that 4th person working, they'll be working in combination with the Murphy, but with the Hanging Dog, Grape Creek, Unaka type area on that side. A lot of times it takes 2 officers to work the Murphy area, because you have not just Murphy, but you have Peachtree and Martins Creek and some of these more heavily populated places. And population has to play a big factor in how you position people. So when we're positioning people and talking about the things such as in Grape Creek and Unaka and those places, we get there and we try to patrol it and try to help out in those areas. But when you've got calls running back to back in Murphy and Martins Creek and several calls at a time going on, it's hard to devote an officer all the time to those areas.
Right.
And so what I tell the guys and what the sergeants are doing a great job on running their shifts, and what they're telling their men is that when there's not a call volume, when we're not backed up on calls and running a lot of calls back to back, then take a trip through these areas, run down through and make a presence there and try to prevent some of these things that's going on in those areas.
I know most of the population's within just a few miles of the 4-lane highway, but then again, you do have that population just because it's not as dense.
Right.
There are a lot of people that live in the outlying parts of the county, and they choose to live in those isolated areas, and they enjoy that.
Right, and it's one of the things that we argue every year at budget time with the commissioners, which is coming up again, and we're starting a process with it. We understand the dynamics of things, and we understand that the amount of money that Cherokee County has that's bringing in on the tax base, and the amount of money that's in the pot to go around to make Cherokee County operate. We understand that we're in a place where the commissioners, it's almost impossible, even if they chose to double our staff or to give us double the amount of cars we have and the uniforms and all those things that come along with doubling your patrol staff. We understand that that's not feasible. But one of the things we argue every year when we argue positions and people and those type of things is the fact of that even though the Andrews, Murphy, Marble, Peachtree, Martins Creek, Ranger, even though these are the more heavily populated areas, and this is kind of where we have to concentrate, that those people who live in Unaka, or those people that live in Violet, or those people that live in Hanging Dog and Grape Creek and some of these places that we don't get to that often because of manpower, those people pay taxes, and those people, if someone's breaking in their house, they deserve a quick response time there also. And so we have to find that balance there between what the county can do and what they're feasibly able to do, and what we can do as far as strategically placing people and those type of things to provide adequate got my tongue tied, adequate coverage. Yeah, it came out wrong. Adequate coverage for those areas. And we understand the fact of, with the dynamics of things, like I say, that we can't necessarily afford as a county for the commissioners to give us positions just to stay in these areas just because we want somebody to stay in those areas. That's why we're trying to have our officers document all the calls, do the reports, and all these things that they're doing in these outlying areas, and when we're doing business checks and extra patrols and security checks and all these different things of logging that down and documenting it, so we can go back later and show that there is a need to be in these areas. There's a need to have an officer there all the time. And like I say, even though we may not have the heavy call volume in Schiller's Creek and Violet and Unaka and Pack Mountain and some of these other places, even though we may not have a tremendous call volume there, that on paper it looks like that we've got to put an officer there, those people still deserve coverage, and they still deserve someone to be close. And if someone's breaking into your house and someone is, you got a drug addict in your yard that's out of his mind and you don't know what he's capable of, and you call 911, it doesn't set well with you for an officer to have a 15 or 20 minute response time to get to your house. And so we try to strategically place what we have in those areas to where maybe normally there'd be a 20-minute response time, but because we've placed people in areas, we may cut that down to a 5 or 10-minute response time. And so we're making progress on that, and we're doing very well with that. I noticed a lot of things, especially in the Hiwassee Dam area, in the Ranger area, the times have been cut way down on that as far as response times of what it was in the past. So we're making progress across the county, but you can only do so much with what you have.
Yeah, you only have enough, just so much money to spend, so much manpower, so you have to prioritize things. Let's see, we haven't received any press releases lately, so hopefully that's a good. That's good.
It is
that we haven't had any real high-profile crimes that happened.
Well, Roger and I was talking about this the other day. He does most of our press releases, and when I talked to him about that, because we got some reports back from media outlets and stuff about not seeing press releases, for a while. We're doing the routine stuff, the drug arrest, the people breaking in houses, solving a lot of those crimes, getting property back to people, the things that we do on a daily basis. And it's not very exciting to us, and so we don't think we're doing anything out the way or special. But one of the things me and Roger talked about is to the public. We still got to get that information out there for the public to understand what we're doing. And so we're looking at a little bit of the way we're doing press releases and maybe do some changes on that and do more of our mundane, everyday type press releases and at least do the rest report, where people can get out and see what's going on and what we're doing as a county. We are doing a lot of drug investigations, drug cases right now, and a lot of them are those high-profile type drug investigations. However, when we arrest people and we're interviewing people, sometimes these things roll into information about a bigger person or another thing we're working on. So we're kind of reluctant on putting those press releases out because we don't want to advertise to the bad guys out there that we've caught their partner.
Right.
So,
understandable.
Yeah. So we are trying to maintain that balance between what we do as an investigation and getting that information out to the public. So hopefully especially on these drug arrests, hopefully here in just a little bit, we'll have some things wrapped up to where we can do several of those press releases at one time and get them all out there so people understand what we've been working on.
All right. Very good. Breaking and enterings, up, down, or about
They're
the
down
same?
right now.
That's good.
Yeah, they are down.
We mentioned that 2 weeks ago. They were down then as well.
Right. So we're still a little bit lower than what our normal breaking and entering is. I didn't check for the month of February. I hadn't checked yet. I've just been so busy. I've not been back into my numbers on it. But I do know that in January they were about half of what it has been running in January. So I think we had 25 breaking and enterings for the month of January. Normally we run somewhere around between 40 and 50 a month. So those were cut down pretty significantly. And
I know Clay County had a very interesting breaking and entering recently. We posted on there. A lady had gotten back home. She lived, I think, in the Ford Creek area of Warren, somewhere around there, and she noticed that her door was open. So she called. She did the right thing.
Right.
She called and 911 and responded, and they followed a blood trail to the suspect who was in her bed and had no clothes on.
Right.
And so she absolutely did the right thing because had she gone in that situation, it may have. And I think the reason for his being there was to steal medication, is what the press release from Clay County said. Does that happen a lot?
It does happen a lot. We're seeing a lot of our breaking and entering larcenies. We're seeing a less and less of the televisions and DVD players and those type of things being stolen, and seeing more and more of medications being stolen. So that is a problem in the area. That is what we're facing. And with the drug use and the people that's out here that we're working on every day, we want to make sure the public understands that this is not a Cherokee County issue. This is a regional issue. This is a national issue that's going on. And so even though, I know that we have a lot of incidences where the officers are working. We had one yesterday where an officer responded to the Hiawassee Dam community where there was a person that was intoxicated and obviously on drugs in a family's yard there, and the officer had to go down and arrest him there at that place. We had another one last night where there was a female in someone's yard that just showed up about 10 o'clock last night that was out of her mind on drugs and different things, and wound up having to arrest her last night and get them out of these people's yards. But we know of these things, and these things are happening a lot in Cherokee County. But we must understand that it's not just Cherokee County. It's happening in Graham County and Clay County and Macon County and Jackson and Swain and all around us, And so we don't want to paint the picture that we have a problem here that's unique to Cherokee County. It's not a problem that's unique to the county. It's a problem that's regionally all around us. And so it's something that we're going to have to figure out how we're going to deal with this. What is the solution to this? And obviously, like I've said before, that on the addict end, on the user end, we're not accomplishing anything by arresting people and putting them in jail. We're arresting them or putting them in jail, either on a possession charge or paraphernalia charge. A lot of these people are either getting a low bond or an unsecured bond and getting out. And even if they do get a secured bond and in jail, by the time they go to court or have a bond hearing in court, sometimes the courts reduce the bond or let them out of jail, and then we're dealing with them again on a revolving door. And I know the question comes up a lot of times is, well, why don't the judges set high bonds and keep them in there so they don't get out? We do have a right. We have a right to a bond. We have a right to make bail. And so we can't use the bond system as punishment. We can't. For example, if someone's in there for a paraphernalia charge or a simple possession charge, we can't give them $1 million bond, or the magistrate can, or the judge can't give them $1 million bond just to keep them in jail.
Right.
They have to set appropriate bonds. They have to set things that for what they're being accused of, they have a right to make that bond and to get out. And like we talked about before, those bond issues are not set there for punishment. They're set there to ensure you show up for court. So if it's a local person with a local residence and they have family here and ties here, the magistrates or the judges don't have necessarily the discretion to set them a bond, because there's no reason for them to think that they're going to flee or not be here for court. So it's a complicated issue that there is no simple answer to. And I know a lot of time the magistrates and the judges get pounded a lot because of these, and they get the blame a lot because of it. But they're just doing their job, and they're doing their job in a way that the law is set up for them to do their job, and the Constitution and civil rights and those type of things. So, what the point of this, and this is what I tell people all the time, is people call in and say, well, my neighbor's dealing drugs. Why don't you just go in there and clean it up? Why don't you go in there and just keep their door in, Mm-hmm. And my response is, because we have a process that we have to go through. And how would you like it if your neighbor called down here and reported you for dealing drugs, and we just showed up at your house one day and kicked your door in and went and started going through all your stuff? You wouldn't like that, and you wouldn't agree with that. And so we have to look at that from both points of view, and understand that, that we do have to make sure we don't violate people's civil rights, that we don't do things in a way that's inconsistent with the way the court says they should be done. So I know it's frustrating, and I know a lot of times, especially with these neighbor issues where you got a neighbor next door that's selling drugs and people in and out in cars and all that, it gets frustrating because sometimes it seemingly, and sometimes it doesn't get fixed, But going back on that and what we said before, that's not a problem that's unique to Cherokee County. That's a problem everywhere. And with our manpower and our resources that we have, we literally just cannot get to every house in Cherokee County that has a drug issue or a drug problem. We have to be selective about what we're doing and do things that we have a future in sight and the end in sight to work on.
I know when we first started talking about the drug problem, you had made a reference to your approach is to cut the head of the snake off before it gets. Yeah. Is there a way to track where the really bad drugs, where they're coming from? Are they coming from out of the county into the county?
Yeah, that's a lot of things that we have been working on. And like I say, I know it's frustrating on that user end, because your neighbor that's a user and your neighbor that may sell small amounts to keep their habit going, they're the ones that has the vehicles in and out. They're the ones that are causing neighbor dispute problems and those type of things. So they are the really thorn in the flesh. They're the little aggravation that keeps everything stirred up. But what we have been doing, even though we can't get to all those people and all those issues in the county, we've been trying to go after those dealers and those suppliers. We have been very successful. Last year, I wish I had a number. Maybe if I think about it, I'll bring you a number next week. But we have done multiple trafficking cases this past year on arresting people for trafficking amounts of drugs and selling trafficking amounts of drugs and big quantities of drugs. And so we've done a lot of those arrests last year and done a lot of good police work on the investigative end as to where these drugs are coming from and how they're getting them. One of our problems is that being right here on the Georgia border, we are in an area where probably 90+% of our drug activity in Cherokee County is coming from Georgia. Coming from those North Georgia areas, coming from the Atlanta area northward. So that's where the flow of our drugs are coming from, is coming from Atlanta north. When we track these drugs back and we track them into this different state, then we have to give a lot of things to Georgia and have to give a lot of information to them for them to work on their end. What we do know for a fact that a lot of our local dealers and a lot of these people that we've charged with trafficking are people who are not necessarily dealing trafficking amounts with each other here, but if they have the money and the resources, they just get in a car and drive to Atlanta and get it and then bring it back to Cherokee County. So even though we may have 10 different people that we've charged with trafficking on the dealer end, that doesn't necessarily mean they're dealing with each other or moving those drugs here, other than small amounts going to the street. Most of those people are getting in a car and driving south and getting it and then bringing it back themselves, or are working in conjunction with a family member or a friend, to go do that. So those are the things that we've kind of been working on and working with Georgia and working with the DEA and different people about that as far as how to try to cut this flow off. And like I say, we are still working on a lot of those things. And some of the type of cases that we're working on now that the district attorney is reviewing is conspiracy type cases, to where these people that's in Georgia, these people that's suppliers, even though they didn't step foot in Cherokee County, even though they didn't come here, is just charging them with those conspiracy type charges and charging them with there's a charge called continuing criminal enterprise. If we can prove a hierarchy and how the system flows and all that, we can go back into charging those type of charges and arresting people in Georgia that's never stepped foot in North Carolina. So those are things that we're looking at doing now and trying to get some of these main players off the street.
I know a lot of users probably don't think twice before if someone offers them. If you were to give someone an advice about not taking drugs for the very first time, what it can do, what would the advice be to someone who may be considering drug use?
I think in the education process about drugs it's being realistic about them. I think we need to understand, like for example, marijuana, it in itself may not kill you, if you smoke it. It in itself does have medicinal values and those type of things. We must be honest about that and recognize that. The problem is with the street marijuana that's out there now and a kid going out and buying that stuff, they don't know what it's laced with. They don't know what's in it. And we have actually seized a lot of marijuana that's coming up from the Atlanta area, coming in from different places that may have fentanyl in it, may have opioids in it, may have LSD in it, may have heroin in it, may have cocaine in it. And so these young kids that's trying this marijuana, they may think, well, it doesn't harm me. It's nothing wrong with it. I can smoke this, but they don't know what else they're ingesting in their system.
Why is it coming in that? Is it to get people hooked on a different
It's to get
drug?
people hooked. Okay. And what happens is most time that happens with these young kids, especially when you get in school-age kids, say 13 to 17, along in that age, they will go to these parties and go to different places, and someone will offer them drugs, whether it's marijuana or meth or whatever it may be, or pills, or it could be anything, but they give it to them for free. They don't charge them. And then if they give them marijuana that's, say, laced with cocaine or laced with meth or laced with some of these other things, and they smoke it and develop a dependency on that, they'll give it to them free for a few times to get them dependent on it, to get them wanting it. And then once they get dependent on it and want some more of it, then they start charging them. And so they keep coming back to the same people they've got it from the last 4 or 5 times, but now they're starting to charge them for it. And it creates that buyer-seller type atmosphere.
And I can completely relate to that because that happened with me with chocolate.
Or chocolate.
Chocolate was given to me a few times before, and now I'm hooked on chocolate.
Yeah.
So I completely understand that process.
Yeah. And those type of things are just educational things, to make sure these kids understand.
Do you think parents, on the most part, have good, serious discussions with their kids about drug use?
My simple answer to that would be no. There's some that do. There's some that have conversations about it. But let's like I say, you got to be realistic about it, because most parental discussions are, don't do drugs, they're bad, they'll kill you, and you'll wind up in prison. And that's usually what the discussion is, And so as a kid, what do most kids normally do when their parents tell them not to do something?
The exact opposite.
They do the opposite, right? It's like thing 1 and thing 2 on Dr. Seuss, right? Whatever you tell them to do, they do the opposite. So when you talk about these things, I think you've got to be realistic about it and talk about the properties of drugs and what drugs do to the body, and how that even though it may not have an effect the first time you use it and you may think it's okay, what it's doing chemically inside the body. And I think those are the type of discussions that cause the young people and teenagers to start sitting up and taking notice to what you're saying. Just to say drugs are bad, don't do them, and you'll die and go to prison, don't cut it, because they'll go out and think, oh, mom and dad don't know what they're talking about,
Yeah. Kids don't respond to ultimatums or fear like they maybe once did. They do respect honesty.
Right. And one thing about parental discussions and these type of things is, I'm not saying you need to be from a point of being a friend with your kid. I think one of the worst things we can do is be friends with your kids. I want my kids to love me. I want my kids to respect me and those type of things. But when it comes time to making decisions, there's that clear-cut line between I'm the parent and you're the child, And we've got to draw those lines and make sure those boundaries and those lines are understood. And I think we have to approach it from that point of view of that, I'm not coming to you from a friend, or I'm not coming to you, to try to make you like me, and I'm not going to talk to you because if I talk to you about this, you're not going to like me. Mm-hmm. I think we need to be a parent, and we need to step in there and talk to our kids about these things.
And you've earned their trust,
right?
And that's important for any family. And
we could go into another hour-long show about parental consistency, but and I think that is the truth about that. You've got to be consistent and build that relationship with your kids from an early age. Things can't be okay one day and then you're going to scream and yell the next day about it. You got to build that relationship and be consistent about it, and them understand where the rules and boundaries are. And my daughter's in college now, and my son's in high school. But even now, I'll grab my son off to the side and talk about some things that's happened, whether it's some pictures going around or whether it's some drug use that's going around school or whatever. And don't question him about it. I don't interview him about it, but I just say, that this is not right. That not to be involved in this type of thing, and we have that discussion about it, and then it usually goes back to him assuring me that he's not part of these things, and that type of stuff. And it's not to try to get information about who's doing it. It's just that little nudge and that little reminder that I love you enough to tell you the truth, and I love you enough to try to make sure that you're staying on the right path, And so I think as parents, that's what we need to do. We need to be consistent, and we need to educate our kids about what's going on out there.
All right. Sheriff, thank you very much. Anything you want to add before we close out?
Just one quick thing. Today is the active shooter drill.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned that.
At Ranger Elementary School, there was a call out put out to the parents. School let out at 11 o'clock today. They're currently out there gathering up and getting ready to start the drill. The drill will occur probably around 1 p.m. this evening. So just putting it out there for people that if you see a lot of patrol cars at Ranger School and ambulances and lots of lights and those type of things, just understand there's not a tragic event happening. It's training that's going on.
I will post that on Facebook too, because there may be a lot of people on Facebook that may not be listening to our broadcast.
Right.
So we'll let them know what's going on.
Thank you.
I'm sure we will get tons of people asking.
Probably will.
What's going on at Ranger?
Yeah. And as soon as I get done here in a minute, I'm leaving and heading that away.
Right.
So.
And there was a fire yesterday in Texana.
There was.
I know that was an abandoned house. Was anyone injured at all?
I don't think so. I think it was a brush fire that the wind blew it in the opposite direction and caught the house on fire. I think that's what it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Well, Sheriff, thank you very much for being with us.
Okay.
And we'll do it again, and hope you have a good time at the drill today.
Thank you.
All right. It's WKRK 105.5 FM, 1320 AM, cable TV channel 25. And worldwide at country.am. Stay tuned. We have Pastor Odd Brown with the Little Brasstown Baptist Church coming up in just a few moments.